Welcome to the overview of the 220th General Assembly Moderator Election Process. My name is Andrew Yeager-Buckley. I'll be your moderator and webinar organizer. We're going to go ahead and get started. Today's panelist is Bruce Reyes-Chow. He's a husband, father, pastor, social media guru or geek from San Francisco. In 2008, he was elected moderator of the 218th General Assembly and served the church in that role for 2 years. I first met Bruce at the 209th General Assembly when he was one of my Youth Advisory Delegate Advisors, and I give Bruce most of the credit for keeping me out of trouble that week. I'm happy to say that we have Bruce with us, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, Andrew, good to be with you all. Again, my name is Bruce Reyes-Chow and was the moderator of the 218th General Assembly that took place in San Jose, California. And I'm here today to just give you a little walkthrough about what you'll experience as commissioners as you elect a moderator this summer in Pittsburgh. We just have a few slides for you. I'm just going to walk through them. We did think about trying to put snazzy graphics and some things in, but it'll do us better if I just kind of walk through the process with you to give you an idea what you're going to be ready for. I think one of the first things to understand is how the candidates become candidates, that this is a process of discernment for many folks. To offer themselves up is to stand for moderator. One of the first things that you know is that all candidates must be elected Presbytery commissioners to General Assembly. Can be either teaching elders or ruling elders, but they must be commissioners to General Assembly. When somebody is elected to be a commissioner, then they declare their intent to stand for moderator. I'll talk a little more about what the difference of standing is at the end of this, but they offer themselves up for the service of the church to moderate the General Assembly and to then speak on behalf of the General Assembly for the next 2 years. Generally, the candidates will seek the endorsement of their presbytery. This is not required. It is ordinarily done, but it is not required to stand for election of moderator. And I believe as of the date of this webinar, we have 5 candidates who have declared their candidacy. And there's the snazzy graphic we see. Robert, Janet, Sue, Randy, and Neil, all wonderful folks. So at this point, they are our current moderator candidates. There is still time for others to come forward, but at this point, we have 5. Before General Assembly, the candidates all prepare for what is an exciting, tiring, but a good experience standing for moderator. And one of the first things that they do, which is a change for some of you who have been around General Assemblies for a while, it used to be the practice that a moderator was elected and then they would choose their vice moderator after the election. A few years ago, when Rick Ufford Chase stood for moderator, that changed and we began to select the vice moderators before coming to General Assembly, so folks would know who the 2 candidates were, the moderatorial candidate as well as the vice moderator. The candidates then meet with the Office of General Assembly. They are not just kind of put out there on their own. They meet with General Assembly for orientation to the whole process, but also to build some community between the candidates. This is not a political campaign. These are not adversarial relationships, but these are a group of folks who have all offering themselves to the service of the church. And so it's important that these candidates all build community together and understand that they're all helping for that body to discern the mind of Christ and the will of God. The candidates then begin to prepare for General Assembly, again, by not treating it as a political campaign, by having undue contact with commissioners before General Assembly. The candidates will talk amongst themselves and talk about ways in which they can agree to share information. More and more in recent years, candidates will have a website or a blog, will have social media presence, will meet with folks. Sometimes there are events where all the candidates will gather ahead of General Assembly for some Q&A with a particular region, but there is an understanding that This is not about trying to build adversarial relationships or having it be a political campaign. The next thing is candidates then arrive at General Assembly, and they begin to meet with groups and take on a rather laborious time at General Assembly before the actual election. Once you get to General Assembly, you're known as the candidate for moderator, and folks will want to talk with the candidates, ask them questions, begin to get a sense of who they are as people, as a presence, and help them to discern whether they believe they should be called and elected as moderator. At General Assembly itself, your primary business the first day, Saturday, is the election of the moderator. It is, for me, General Assemblies always feel like kind of a family reunion of Presbyterians where we're allowed to be Presbyterian boldly together. And the election of the moderator is one of the more exciting times. The first thing we do together, it's when the body says to one person, we would like you to help lead us through this next week together. This process that happens that first night, it's moderated by the moderator of the previous General Assembly. So the moderator elected in Pittsburgh will be moderated by Cindy Bulbuck, who was elected in Minneapolis 2 years ago. The process will happen like this. All the candidates are on the platform, and then each candidate is placed into nomination by another General Assembly commissioner. It's generally done with a 5-minute, very strict 5-minute speech given that tells a little bit about why this person, why this commissioner believes their candidate should be elected moderator. Each candidate then has 5 minutes to prepare a presentation themselves and to speak a little bit about why they believe they are called to stand for moderator. One of the lovely pieces about this, it's not, speeches are not given about why someone else shouldn't, but why a particular person does feel called. So there is a sense of, again, fellowship and community built among the candidates. Then each candidate answers questions from the floor for 60 minutes, for an hour. Sometimes it will go longer if the body approves that. And they will take questions about a variety of things that commissioners want to know about. And it begins on a rotation model where one person goes and the next person goes, and then the second question, the second person goes, and so on. So everybody has an opportunity to be the first and the last to answer each questions. After the question and answer, there's prayer and discernment, but the candidates then leave the platform. They're taken to the back of the platform, and the votes are taken by electronic ballot. And the election, there will be the number of votes until one candidate receives 50% plus one, and the moderator declares an election. This is one of the moments where I think it becomes very serious about what we are doing as we read votes into the minutes, as we begin to coalesce as an official body of this denomination, and that this is an important time in the life of our church. After the election has been declared, there's great relief and great disappointment behind the platform, obviously. But the person who is elected is escorted generally from the back of the platform or back of the auditorium or the gathering space, and escorted by a previous moderator to the platform. The newly elected moderator says a few words, and then immediately the order of business switches to the installation of the moderator, which is done by the outgoing moderator. After the installation and the prayer, the new moderator adjourns evening proceedings and then exhales. I want to lift up a couple of things at the end of this time. One is it's important to remember the outgoing moderator, the great sense of relief that they have as they end their term, but also a shift in their relationship with the church, but also the candidates that don't get elected, that they've offered their hearts and minds and spirits to the process, and as much as all try to see this as not about them. We need to make sure we offer prayer and lift up those support who don't get elected, as their voices are still important parts of the church and at the General Assemblies. So that's what happens. We know that for those of you that have been to General Assemblies before, you've seen this happen often, but for the new folks, hopefully this has been just a quick walkthrough about what you're going to experience throughout the General Assembly. I would encourage you to read up a little bit on the candidates so far. I believe all of them have websites and are present online, and you can get a sense of who they are. But the most important part is to really listen and discern when you're at General Assembly, especially during that question and answer time, to get an understanding of their perspective and their personality and how they might moderate and lead that week and the next 2 years as the moderator of the Presbyterian Church. So I think we are going to take a few questions now.
Yeah, thank you so much, Bruce. Yeah, that was really helpful. And one of the points that you made was about how do we learn about the candidates. And information about the candidates is available through PCBiz. There is, if you go into PCBiz and if you are curious about how to use PCBiz, we did a webinar just a few weeks ago on that, and you can review that if you need a little help figuring out how to use that system. But there is information available about the candidates through PCBiz, so you can check that out. But yeah, we are going to take just a few questions, and one of the first questions is about what the candidates are allowed to do before the election. What ways are they allowed or encouraged to kind of engage the church in their candidacy?
Yeah, that is a good question. I think the day and age of social media and electronic connections has changed that a lot, especially over the last, I would say, 4 to 6 years. It used to be that no one had a website, and you would just kind of meet everybody once you got there. Some of the traditional magazines would interview candidates and publish questions and answers, but there was really very little opportunity to interact individually with candidates. I think the understanding is generally that folks will not intentionally contact commissioners privately in order to build votes or block votes or to campaign. So things that you do on Facebook, on Twitter, which are all public kind of spaces, I think that has generally become accepted that you can interact. But the initial contact, I think, generally is seen as coming from commissioners and not the moderator candidates going to every commissioner and contacting them. As well as we don't send letters to all the commissioners. We don't, again, we try to avoid many of the strategies you would use in a political campaign to build a me over and against someone else kind of mentality. This is really about a body discerning together. So I would say at the core it's individual contact from candidate to a commissioner is frowned upon.
Great. The next question we're going to take is there's some maybe a little confusion about some language between the difference between standing and running for office. Why the difference? What does this mean?
Yeah, and some people, it's sometimes, we Presbyterians, it can be semantics, but it also does inform a little bit about the roles that we take. I think there are times where the office of moderator feels like a political position that holds power and influence, and while you can argue that to be true or not, the standing language is important to understand that it's an offering of service to the church, and that you do seek it in some ways, but you're not running for it as in a political office. And I think commissioners generally get a sense, I believe, of when a candidate may feel a little more like they're running for political office than offering themselves up for the church, and that has to be discerned on site. But it's important for candidates to understand that they are standing for it, offering themselves, as opposed to seeking and running for the office. And it's hard to define exactly the difference, but it's one of those things that you kind of know when the line is crossed, when it's crossed.
Okay. The next question we're going to take is folks are interested about the process of when we're able to ask questions of the different candidates. Who's allowed to ask questions and how are they chosen?
Yeah, I think the joke is the quickest to the mic are allowed to ask questions, but it's an elaborate. At some point, I'm sure one of the webinars we'll do electronic voting. But the moderators, when they're on platform, there is a person that monitors every microphone and tells the moderator who is at the microphone and about that person, generally their status in terms of teaching elder, ruling elder, advisory delegate, when's the last time that mic has been called, all those kind of things. So you get it. So the moderators get to choose a microphone to call on and try to get a diversity of voices to ask questions. There's no set list beforehand, so you don't sign up ahead of time with a question. So you really do have to be prepared ahead of time. If you want to ask a question of the moderatorial candidates, as soon as that time is opened up, you get to a microphone, and if the spirit moves, you'll be in line at a time when the moderator chooses to call on your microphone. And sometimes it could be that there may be 20 people standing, 19 are ruling elders, so the moderator may look for a teaching elder to ask a question. So those are the kinds of ways that the moderator begins to choose who gets called on. The key is have a good question ready and be prepared to both ask it or not ask it, but get to a microphone so that you can be in the position that if you are called to do so, you're ready to ask a question. But there's no sign up ahead of time. You have to be ready to ask during that Q&A time.
Great. Thank you so much, Bruce. That's really been helpful. I know this, for many of you, I can see you're kind of posting questions right now, and this was really meant to be a kind of a brief, short overview of the kind of moderator election process. There's more information available through the General Assembly, 220th General Assembly website, plus through PCBiz when it comes to the election process, kind of the standing rules that are set, and I encourage you to check those out. Thanks so much, Bruce.
Yep.
All right. Once again, I'd just like to thank those of you that have joined us today for being here. This is the next in what is a series of orientation webinars that are available each week between now and the Assembly itself. Immediately following this webinar, you're going to be asked to complete just a brief survey asking you about your experience of today's webinar. I encourage you to take a few moments to complete that. I tell you that we take them seriously. We read that. We pay attention to that feedback because we want to make sure that these training tools are meeting the needs of our commissioners, advisory delegates that will be attending this summer. Please, next week, consider being part of our webinar on Tuesday the 17th. It'll be about the stated clerk nomination and election process. That's going to be presented by Dennis Hughes, who is actually going to be representing the stated clerk nominating committee. And you can learn more about that next week. Shortly after this particular webinar, you're going to be receiving an email with registration information for that webinar, as well as information about other upcoming webinars and other training tools that are available. Once again, all webinars are being recorded and are available through the 220th General Assembly website, and please definitely take advantage of those. And just once again want to thank you for joining us. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.